Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our FinTech 30 Insights webinar. And I'm very excited today because today we speak about brand impersonation and how to beat brand impersonation, which is a key topic nowadays where so much happens on social media and so many companies need to identify how to better protect their brand. And I'm very excited today that we have chosen a company who is an expert in the field to join us for this webinar. And the company is Red Points. And you might have heard about Red Points. They're the world's first brand intelligence platform. And they combine online brand protection, copyright enforcement, impersonation removal, and also distributor monitoring capabilities. And by doing that, they help companies full visibility into brands' presence online. And they're helping 800 companies worldwide who rely on their services to really fight fakes, to fight piracy and distribution abuse online, allowing clients to maintain control and to improve their brand value and increase revenues. So that's the topic of our webinar today. And what I would like to do now is to show you the teams. I would like to welcome all team members from Red Point to join me. And we will show also you a slide deck, which really explains what the expertise is the Red Point team brings to the table. So focus today on how to beat impersonation in 2021. And I'm today joined by 3 experts from Red Points. First of all, Daniel Shapiro. Daniel is the Vice President of Brand Relationships at Red Points. Number 2, Ollie Bolton. And Ollie is the Head of Solutions Engineering. And number 3, Joan Porter. And Joan is the Vice President of Customer Success in the US. So a super team today. Thank you very much all for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And what we want to do today is we will go through a slide deck, about 20 minutes, and then we want to open it up for your questions. So it will be a very interactive session and invite all of you who are joining us today live to please type your questions into the Q&A section on the right of your screen. And we will respond to all your questions after the slides are completed, after the presentation is finished. We'll come to the Q&A session. We want to be able to respond to all of you individually. So please come forward with your questions. We'll be very interactive. We're really excited to know what you want to know more about. And what we want to do first is to start out with a couple of polls to really understand what your background is, what your experience is so far in terms of impersonation. So the first question you will see on your screen is about, have you ever fallen victim of impersonation? And you can either respond yes with no or not sure, and please just then say submit, and we will collect all your responses to come to that back later. So I unfortunately have been impersonated already, so I have to say yes here. And you can see already on the interesting side, so 43% of you have been already impersonated. The same amount have not been, and 14% are not sure yet if it happens, because you're totally right. Sometimes you don't even find out. It took me a few months before I found out that I got impersonated on Telegraph. So that's really interesting. So let's go to the second question now. Poll number 2. Here, what would you do if someone impersonated your business on social media? So that's, again, something really concerning. So what would you do? Would you take legal actions? Would you just panic? Would you report that this is a phishing attack or is fraud? Would you warn your community, or all of the above? How would you respond? Again, click your response and press submit. And again, we see the results coming in, and very interesting, it's currently leading is take legal action. So the majority of you would take legal action, followed by all of the above, which is, again, a great response. And some of you would say reported as phishing or fraud, and warned by community about 12% at the moment. So very interesting responses. Thank you so much for your answers. So what I would love to do now is to hand over to Daniel to start with the presentation. Very excited to the presentation now and to share and listen to your expertise, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Suzanne, and thank you all for allowing us to have a little bit of your time today. We certainly appreciate it. Suzanne gave such a great explanation of Redpoints. I'll just share with you, for those who have not heard of us before or not familiar with our technology, but we are a brand intelligence solution designed to mitigate risk for e-commerce sites, marketplaces, social media, including social engineering, specifically targeting the fraudulent act of impersonation. And we do that by combining both world-class technology as well as very talented, trained professionals who together make a very agile strategy for solving this fast-growing problem. And so today we are going to discuss as to, why this topic matters. And for us, it matters because impersonation is a security challenge that damages brand reputation and creates a financial risk for organizations and for all of its stakeholders. The volume, location, sophistication of impersonations makes it very, very difficult for internal security teams to tackle alone. In matter of fact, in recent years, the growing trend is toward more sophisticated campaigns that rely on a combination of lookalike domains, fake accounts on social media, and fraudulent mobile apps. And according to the FBI, impersonation attacks have delivered losses of about $5.3 billion so far. And of course, it's not just about the money. It is about the money, but it also can include your client sensitive information. It can include customer confidence and trust. And I think the biggest of all is brand loyalty and reputation damage, right? Today, data in the UK shows that impersonation scams have increased by 84% in 2020 alone. These fraudsters have sought to exploit banks and cause confusion around the COVID-19 pandemic. And at least 15,000 cases were reported in the first half of the year for 2020. And that means criminals raked in more than 58 million pounds in this first 6 months of last year using this particular technique. So it's quite challenging. Social network companies, by the way, are very aware of the problem, and they are continuing to think about and combat this social engineering problem by vetting and verifying accounts and interacting with users to weed out imposters. The challenge, of course, is the speed of change. Opening new accounts, changing accounts once they're vetted, these are all problems. And the point here is that it takes collaboration, diligence, and technology to protect your brand. To prevent impersonating accounts, it takes a significant effort from platforms and brands. The efforts to ruin your reputation and steal your customers' money happens every day. It's systematic, it's diverse, and it's increasingly complex. And I will have my colleague, Joan Porta, share a little bit more about the growing problem with impersonation on social media and how we think about addressing them. Joan?
Yep, thank you, Daniel, and hello, everyone. Exactly, so what I'll be discussing in my section is essentially some of the learnings that we've taken from our experience protecting brands and companies against impersonation attacks. Before we share some of those learnings, let me start though by explaining, making sure we all understand the topic of this discussion and what we mean by social media impersonation. So according to the Oxford Dictionary, an impersonation is the act of pretending to be another person for the purpose of entertainment or fraud. Today, we're obviously not interested in impersonations for entertainment purposes, such as parodies, fake pages, fan pages, criticism, not only because the risk associated here is very low, but also because these are type of impersonations that would normally be protected under free speech, and they don't constitute a trademark infringement, right? So we want to focus about impersonations as a medium to commit digital fraud. And with this in mind, we can establish a first classification based on the intended fraud, based on what are these impersonators chasing, what are they trying to achieve. First of all, fake news. These are often spread by accounts that are impersonating politicians, celebrities, public institutions, media outlets. It's a hot topic, definitely, but this will not be our focus today. Second, counterfeiters also rely heavily on social media to promote and sell fake products. So there's accounts trying to pass off as legitimate retailers. There's aggressive advertising campaigns. Again, it's a very interesting topic. We could talk about it for hours, but it's probably not very relevant for financial institutions. What we want to focus on today are impersonations used to commit scams and phishing attacks against consumers. We think this is the most relevant and common digital fraud impacting the financial industry, and this is what we will be talking about today. So plain and simple, this would be fraudsters that are targeting your customers to steal, as Daniel said, their money and sensitive data. And we know that this is a practice that has been going on for years, both offline and online. And when we think about online, we talk about email impersonations, we talk about fake domain names, spoofed websites. The point we want to make today is that social media has become a prominent channel for cyber attacks, and that any financial institution, large and small, should be monitoring it closely. And so before we talk a bit more about how some of these impersonators operate in social media, I would like to share with you a few examples. The first one, this one here. This is a case that caught a lot of attention back in 2018. It was a wave of impersonation, Elon Musk impersonation attacks on Twitter. You can see some of the headlines. And the example on the bottom part, this was a specific example of a fraudster they hacked a Twitter verified account. You can see the blue check on the account. And all they did then was to change the name to Elon Musk, to start using his same profile picture and begin tweeting as if they were the CEO of Tesla. Then what they did was to link the account to a cryptocurrency scam, claiming that Musk was doing giveaways, and they were requiring users to send their own Bitcoins to the scam. So a classical scam impersonating a public figure in this case. There's two things that are relevant and we want to highlight about this case. The first one is that when we're talking about social media impersonations, we should not only be thinking about pages that are trying to imitate your corporate accounts. Scammers will launch very sophisticated, targeted, customized attacks against your brand, and they will often be impersonating also your executive and your employees. The second point that we want to make is that this was a case that happened back in 2018. So you would think that it was just a temporary scam and that it was quickly addressed by Tesla, by Twitter, or the social media platforms where it was happening. But if we move into the next slide, what we see here is on the bottom part, we see 4 fake social media accounts for Elon Musk. These were all live this morning, so these ones exist and they're very easy to find. If you go to Instagram, to Twitter, you will find them. It's worth noting, not only some of them include the word official and they pretend to be either tweeting or posting as if they were Elon Musk, but if you look at the number of followers, there's one with 1.6 million followers, the other one with nearly 500,000, 300,000, 14,000, many of them including links that are trying to redirect users into external websites. So again, this is live and happening today. And on top of the slide, there is a headline from a very recent article published in November 2020 that they're explaining that the exact same problem that happened on Twitter back in 2018, so a massive Bitcoin scam, was now happening in one of the fastest growing social media platforms, which is Twitch. If we move into the next slide, our second case here, this is about a technique called deepfakes. It's a very sophisticated form of impersonation. It's got a lot of attention lately. Maybe some of you have already seen some of these videos. I don't know if we can try and play it. This is a video from Tom Cruise, as you can all see.
Okay, TikTok. Impression time. This is a 5-second impression of a snapping turtle coming out of the show. You mess up my hair. Nope.
So we could do a poll and ask also what the audience thinks, but I can give you the answer. As hard as it is to believe, this is not a real video from Tom Cruise. This is a video featuring an actor, and there's a lot of production work behind it and a lot of machine learning technology. This is what's known as deepfake, being able to imitate and replicate a public figure or a character using technology to this level where I think everyone would have thought that this was a real video of Tom Cruise. This is a TikTok page, which you can see the URL here. It includes other videos. It's called Deep Tom Cruise. And if you want to check it out, there's other videos from the same actor and explaining how the techniques used to create the videos. So basically, we decided to choose these two examples. We could have chosen, there's thousands of fake financial institution pages out there that we could have shown, but we wanted to highlight these two cases because we thought that even though they're quite specific, they exemplify, in our view, the sophistication and the risk associated with social media. So most impersonation attacks today, it's true, they will not reach this level of sophistication, but as technology evolves, we will unfortunately have to be ready to face cases like this more and more often. Now that we've seen a few examples, we'll talk a little bit about some of the trends and the patterns that we're seeing on social media lately. The first thing to say is that the way impersonators operate can be very diverse, and it will vary essentially depending on the social media platform that we're talking about, or the objectives or the level of sophistication of the bad actors. But however, there's some common behaviors, as we're saying, that we are observing and we want to share with you. The first one would be, I think the first takeaway is that there's usually a correlation between the number of impersonation attacks against a brand and their social media presence. So on the one end, we see that brands that don't have an official account, so brands that don't have any sort of official presence in a specific platform, these are a very easy target for fraudsters because they will try to take advantage of this gap to deceive the brand's followers on that platform. Our advice here is, we know there's hundreds of social media platforms out there. Ideally, you would want to keep an eye to all of them, but particularly you want to at least focus, you want to be monitoring those ones where your customers, your audience may be. So depending on age groups, countries, territories, industries, you may focus in some social media platforms or others. But aside from the usual suspects, I would say important to keep an eye always on LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitch, Telegram, Snapchat, VK in Russia, WeChat, and Weibo in China, and the list goes on, of course. But these are some of the important ones. On the other hand, so we said if you don't have any presence, you could be a target. But we also observe that brands that have a very active presence on social media, they tend to be also a prime target for impersonators. This is because scammers know that there's a large base of customers that they can defraud, and they're going to try to take advantage of that. So again, don't think that just because you have an official account on Instagram and your account is verified, there's no risk there. There may still be hundreds, dozens of fake profiles in the platform, and you still need to monitor and take action. In connection to this, the way we normally see impersonators operating is they tend to use the same photos, names, descriptions, bios, posts, hashtags of your official accounts. So it's critical to monitor those assets. When you're running searches, try to use the same hashtags and see who else is using those hashtags in that social media platform. If you're using specific keywords or images for your promotional campaigns, try to monitor those assets also. Besides using these official assets, they will often do it in conjunction or using terms such as official, support, customer service, authorized agent. So monitoring all these keywords is also important. And very often they do it while promoting brochures, sweepstakes, and fake giveaways. So again, you need to make sure that you're not only monitoring your brand, but you're also using all these terms and assets to avoid bad actors falling under the radar. Another common behavior that we see is that, or another thing to take into account is that even when you find a page, an account that has very few posts or followers, it doesn't imply that it's risk-free. They may be sending private messages, or they may be running very aggressive advertising campaigns to their victims in order to take them into external websites where they will be committing the fraud. So again, you see a fake profile with 0 followers, 0 posts. They're just using your logo and brand name on the account name. It doesn't mean that it's not harmful. They can still be targeting your customers and again redirecting them outside the social media platform and committing their illegal activities there. What else? Linked to this, also connected, many social media platforms, and some people don't know this, but a lot of social media platforms, when you set up a new account, it may take some days until that account is visible on the search results. So if you go to Facebook, for instance, and you search and you try to find a page, if this page was created within the last 2 or 3 days, it may not pop up in your results. And fraudsters that know this, at least the most sophisticated actors, they're going to try to take advantage of these windows where they're very hard to detect to launch very aggressive attacks. Again, usually using private messaging or targeted advertising campaigns. So there's ways to monitor advertising campaigns also, and something you should definitely keep in mind. And finally, to close, I would say there's the type, as we were saying, that type of social network will strongly determine the form of impersonation. So for instances, on LinkedIn, what we usually see are impersonations of company executive, employees, very often sales representatives, agents trying to target customers, making it as if they were part of your company or organization. Other social media platforms where we'll see like instant messaging apps, we're going to be seeing groups mostly there. Sometimes they can be private groups, harder to access. Sometimes they're public groups. On Facebook, Twitter, the impersonations usually take the form of a page or an account, but we sometimes see them using profiles, groups, events. So I think understanding this complexity, understanding for each platform, the structure, the uses, and the audience that it has is critical in order to adapt your protection strategy accordingly and make sure that you're targeting all the fraudsters that are out there. This was the main behaviors wanted to share. Happy to answer more questions at the end, but now I will be handing it over to our colleague Oliver. He's our technical expert, and Oli is going to share with us some of the technologies and tools that can be deployed in the fight against online impersonations.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Joan. Super interesting. So when it comes to actually stopping the impersonators, most platforms on which the impersonations actually exist do give you the tools in order to report them. But in general, the responsibility of identifying and then ultimately reporting those fake accounts is on those that are being affected by them. So in this regard, the first piece of advice that we've got, which is super clear, be proactive about the problem. No one else is going to solve it for you, basically. So the idea of the Redpoint system is such that we can really provide that type of assistance with being able to automate certain areas. So in very serious cases, the use of technology for daily tracking and reporting of these violations is a must. So being able to have a solution that's consistently on this daily basis monitoring and detecting these new incidences out there, and combining that with the use of the broad words that Joanne was just mentioning. So it's the idea of having a core set of keywords that are obviously relevant to those, to the original accounts, and being able to broaden the spectrum to encapsulate all of these ones with the misspellings, with the additional numbers, the digits added to the end. And having a system to be able to do that for you is going to give you that proactive approach. Not only that, it's also recommended that, as Joanne was saying, like the monitoring of the hashtags and all of this is super important. Now, if you can have a system to do that for you, it definitely lightens the load, put it that way. Now, when it comes to the logo recognition, the idea of the trends that we're spotting in terms of how impersonators are advertising these profiles, the trends are just that, right? It's always a particular image that seems to be appearing through there. So by combining the technologies of a broad keyword term, and then being able to identify those that are of most importance with technology such as logo recognition, this helps bring to the fore those that you really want to review before taking action and requesting that they're taken down. It reduces the false positives. Secondly, one thing that I've failed to mention as well is, of course, the importance of a whitelist. So having this whitelist and knowing where the original accounts are, it means that anything outside of those that are original is then going to be at least suspicious. The last thing that I really want to touch on is about being able to apply a risk and similarity score. So at Redpoints, what we're able to do is use algorithms based on the additional information that we extract from the original profile, such as names, descriptions, photos, number of followers, hashtags, posts, creation dates. All of this data can be used, manipulated, in order to generate the likelihood of it being an infringing account or not. This always adds into kind of helping you to prioritize and choosing your best enforcement strategy. Really, all it comes down to is that a comprehensive brand protection strategy should monitor your brand usage beyond social media. And as Joanne just touched on, it's a case of not just the domain names that you want, not just social media, but you want to be looking at your domain names and any additional websites that fall outside of that. And then there's also app stores as well. So that's really it from me. I'll pass you back over to Daniel to wrap up.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I think when to summarize both Joanne's presentation and sort of Oliver's discussion on how our technology works and how we partner with and collaborate with brands, fintech companies, I would say this, that social media represents a growing problem, right, affecting thousands of brands, individuals across many, many platforms. And as discussed, the associated risks, which include revenue loss for sure, but also notably, again, I'll just say it, I know we've repeated it a few times, but the reputational damage is significant. Customer loyalty, right? There are so many competitive institutions out there that, losing a customer who has fallen victim to an impersonation perhaps is the most damaging of all, is your brand loyalty, your brand reputation. It's critical. All of us work so hard to make sure our brands are impeccable, and this is just one of those things that really take aim at it. And then brands must take a proactive approach, right? You have to do something. Not doing something is not a solution. And you need something that is both comprehensive and scalable in order to put in place to help identify and remove this fraudulent activity as soon as possible. And of course, we think it takes a combination of both technology and expertise in order to really leverage what we think is the intellectual property solution or enforcement for such a problem. So with that said, I hope this has been informative. I hope it helps. And we look forward to answering some of your questions. Suzanne, I will turn it over to you to guide us through the Q&A at this point.
Fantastic, Daniel. Thank you so much to Daniel, to Ollie and Joanne, for sharing your expertise. It was super interesting. I must say, I love the fake video, of Tom Cruise, and it looks so real. It's almost scary. I think when you look at that, how technology allows you to create those fakes. So really dangerous, in our world. But then I wanted to invite all our guests now to ask questions you've got for the Redpoints team. It's simply by typing in the questions on the right side in the Q&A box. So please just type in the questions. We will read it out then and come back to you with our responses. But if I can start out with the first question, please, which is about your vision. And I would like to know more about what's the vision behind Red Points.
I'll take that one if it's okay, Suzanne. I think that when we think about our vision, as I mentioned previously in the wrap-up, but we think it takes a combination of technology, human intelligence, and for us, we think from a vision of staying on top of these sorts of fraudulent activity, that it takes a company who's willing to adapt and evolve very quickly, identifying new technologies that support these ever-changing fraud schemes and circumvention techniques used by, the bad actors who are out there to, wreak havoc on all sorts of companies. So we think our vision is really the speed of adaptation and evolving at a speed that makes us relevant to help so many brands.
Fantastic, Daniel. We've just got a question from Mustashrik Mahbub. Thank you very much for this question. It was about deep fakes and how we can monitor those deep fakes and protect against them.
Joanne, you want to take that?
Sure, let me see if I can see the question. I have it here. A very long question. It's asking first, if we can help the media sector battle the new era of fraud and impersonation, in particular, ones that lead to reputational issues, loss of customer trust. I think the first, as an answer to your first question, Mustajrik, which is whether we can help. So I would say yes, anything that constitutes an impersonation, and as I explained at the beginning of my presentation, platforms tend to have very clear policies in terms of what is an impersonation and not. And so taking out anything that has to do with news, commentary, criticism, fan pages, those would be excluded. But if someone is trying to pass off as a company or an individual, that constitutes a clear case of impersonation, and that's something where we can definitely help both monitoring and detecting, and then taking down. We cover the full process, finding and then removing those impersonations. The success rate in impersonations are very high, meaning the removal rates, as compared to other incidents. Sometimes if we talk about counterfeiting, for example, design patent infringements, those can be more complex incidents from a legal perspective, and the success rates may be higher. When we're finding impersonations, the success rate is usually extremely high. You're mentioning, I think, in the second part of the question, whether there's technology, facial recognition technology to trace and track and then shut down deep fake issues available in the web and the deep web. So it's a complex question or issue. I would say two things. We're just starting to see deep fakes. This is our experience. And we're seeing them more in the context of a certain technological company or app giving a tool for people. And we're not actively seeing, at least in social media, in the digital space, we know that there may be more phone scams, for example, that are impersonating someone's voice, and that could be considered a deep fake, for example. But in the context of social media, app stores, even in the deep web, we're not seeing yet a lot of deep fake issues, at least for the brands and the companies that we represent. We have image recognition technology and image fingerprinting technology, and also logo recognition, which allows us to automate a lot of the detection and validation part. And definitely any trends connected to deep fakes are something that we're following closely. And if we see a need to, we will develop technology to try and help brands to fight it. Not sure if this completely answers your question, but let us know if you want something else.
Wonderful, John. Thank you. Second question came in from Susan Holiday from Washington. And Susan works for the International Finance Corporation, IFC, in Washington. And her question is about how concerned should individuals be versus companies? Is it cost effective for individuals and small companies to monitor this?
Well, maybe I'll take a part of that, and maybe if Joanne, if there's something that I leave out, certainly jump in. But I think from our perspective, our ability to help brands on here is to use intellectual property as one of our weaponry that we use, right? We talked about different technologies we use to find them, but our weapon to solving them is illegal use of a financial institution's intellectual property, which is how we go about getting them removed. And it happens very, very quickly. As far as a private person, I believe there are solutions out there for private individuals. We're probably not that best suited for that, but I don't know, Joanne, any thoughts there as it relates to private individuals?
Yeah, when we protect private individuals, it's usually in the context of, again, executives or employees of a specific company, where we can still use the company's trademark as our argument to enforce and remove those impersonations. For an individual person, I would say celebrities are definitely a huge target. Think about any celebrity that can come up to your mind. Go to Facebook, Instagram, type their names, and you'll find hundreds, thousands of pages. For an individual person that is not a public figure, I would say generally there are cases. There's been cases that have been reported, but generally it's not a huge issue. I would say for someone, an individual person that is not a public figure, maybe hiring a technological solution like ours may not make sense. What you can do is you can just simply go to some of the most known social media platforms, and every now and then type your name and see whether there's potentially someone impersonating you. And if there is, and you have systems to report it. But I think this is usually more for companies that have high volumes, and addressing the problem manually becomes completely impossible or is not effective. If you're just seeing a few cases pop up here and there, you can cover it manually usually.
Right.
Great advice, John. One thing which we often get asked as well is, what exactly should you do? So if your company, because you talked about with Twitter, about Elon Musk, how they have to fight against fake accounts. And if you're a company and you find out that your account has been impersonated, what are the top 3 things a company should do?
Yep, so connected to what I was just saying, I think the first one I would say report it immediately, and all platforms or almost all platforms will have impersonation policies in place, and they will have tools to allow you to report an impersonation, and it will usually be taken down, removed within a matter of hours or days. For platforms that don't have these policies, what our suggestion would be they might have intellectual property or trademark infringement policies. So when they don't have a specific impersonation policy, all these impersonations constitute a clear trademark infringement. So if you have a trademark registered, you can use that trademark usually to submit a takedown notice and remove the impersonation. So step number 1, for sure, taking it down. And then, as we say, usually if there is one, there is going to be more. It's strange that a brand only has one impersonation. So as I mentioned a little bit in my section, start by running your own searches using, again, as I said, the keywords from the brand, but also words like support, official, agent, the type of keywords that you usually include in your promotions. Run your own searches, not only on that social media platform, but in other social media platforms. And based on your audit, you will be able to determine whether this is something that for now you can handle yourself using the reporting tools from each platform, or whether you need automation to fight the problem because you either don't have the resources, maybe you don't have the expertise, or maybe, as I said, the volumes are just too high for anyone to try to do it manually.
That's great. And John, I think you just mentioned it takes about 2 days or so to remove a fake account, but how can you assess the potential damage which is being done?
Yeah, I think I'll take that one, Suzanne. I think for us, when we think of how long it takes, sometimes it can be within just a few hours, and sometimes it can take 24, 36 hours, but it can be very, very quick in terms of the way in which we approach the solution of removing the what we'll call the infringing impersonation, that is people infringing on your company's intellectual property. When we think about the damage, because we're not the financial institution in this case, we don't really know the damage, but what we think about when we see it, I think Joanne identified it really, really well when he was showing the example of Elon Musk, where there were 4 current impersonations up there, some with 400,000 followers, a number of hashtags, links, all those things tend to, at least in our thought process, multiply the damage factor that is out there, or I should say the potential damage to a brand by having that many followers. So I think that's one of the things we tend to look at is what that when we identify an impersonation, what's the screenshot, what's the snapshot of those followers, hashtags, and so forth.
Makes perfect sense. And in terms of responsibility, what's actually your responsibility as a brand owner when you identify impersonation?
Well, it depends. I would say, well, from a legal standpoint, it's hard to argue that there's a legal obligation. I don't think there's a legal obligation for the brand to take down these scammers. You could argue, but that's our view. Now, there's definitely a responsibility towards your own customers, I think, because at the end, if they're being scammed, if they having their money stolen by these scammers that are running, they're being scammed while using your trademark, no, or associated to your trademark. And this is what we see often, that customers, even when you might say it was the customer's fault, it was a very obvious scam. Why did they click on here? Why did they answer this email or what? But at the end of the day, they will make the brand responsible in a way for protecting them and for keeping a clean ecosystem or space in social media, right? When you type the name of a brand on Instagram and you get hundreds of accounts, I think customers don't like this, and if they fall into one of the traps and into one of the scams, they will tend to blame the brand, I think. So definitely this responsibility towards your own community and towards your own customers, I think that's there. And we kind of touched a little bit on this, but I think it's important that we understand that platforms are not going to do the job for you, and the Elon Musk example was just one of many. There's very little legal incentives for platforms, and this applies to social media, this applies to marketplaces, hosting providers. Very little legal incentive to actually be proactive against intellectual property infringements. And so they will usually have good reporting tools for right holders to go and submit their complaints, and they will be processing those complaints and removing. Not all of them have them, and not all of them are as good, but generally, they will have a good reactive system, but they will never be proactive. So even when there's obvious cases of impersonations on social media platforms that you would say it's obvious and it has hundreds of thousands of followers, platforms will not do anything. They will not do anything proactively. They only when the brand reports it. So I think this is also a key takeaway. You have to be the one doing something about it. No one is going to solve that problem for you. And again, it doesn't matter if you have an official account. It doesn't matter if you have a great relationship with Facebook, with Instagram. If you spend a lot of money on advertising on those platforms, you need to be the one finding and reporting those accounts. They're not going to do it for you.
That's a key lesson learned, and it's surprising because you would assume that those platforms take more responsibilities, but I think it's important for us all to know that they don't, and therefore we ourselves have to fight, for our own rights if we are impersonated, and we have to take action because nobody else will otherwise, so I think that's a really good call to action and really being responsible.
I was going to say, Suzanne, I think one of the challenges is because everybody gets to create your own social media pages. And I think in some cases, they don't know that you didn't create one called, Daniel Official. You created one that was Daniel, but they didn't know that Daniel Official wasn't also yours, right? So they don't know until you tell them. But if it's not, right, that's when you want to do it. So sometimes we think, well, gosh, why couldn't they find that? And that's part of the reasons of the millions or billions of pages. They just didn't know that you only wanted one social media page and not 2 or 3.
Yes, makes also sense. You're right.
Yeah.
And one thing which I always found so surprising, when I look at these fake accounts, is some of them have amassed millions of followers. How do they do that? How do they manage to get so many followers? Because sometimes I think it's almost obvious it's a fake account, but sometimes it's not. It's more sophisticated. What have you seen as how they are doing those tricks.
Well, as we said, they're very sophisticated, some of them, and they know how to run. It's not just an account. There's usually a network behind this with multiple domain names, websites that are set up, and these guys know how to run digital marketing campaigns, solid digital marketing campaigns, and especially, as we said, also to try to take advantage of the gaps they see in the market, a certain platform where the brand has no official presence, or a new platform where they know that there's, because imagine, let's think about a digital bank that their customer base is formed basically by millennials and young people. Those people will be on Twitch, those people will be on TikTok, those people are going to be on WeChats, and some brands, some corporations, they just don't have presence yet in some of this. So again, these are often very sophisticated networks behind these scams, and that's how they're able to grow their audience and their traffic so much. The other part of the answer would be, and because no one is doing anything, as we just said, proactively, because if you were to monitor those platforms, find this and report it, obviously you wouldn't let them have a follower base of 1 million people, right? So yeah, I think it's both things.
And part of it even is, the patience of fraudsters, right? You think when you create a fake page that you then want to, inflict damage, but they're extremely patient. And so when they get 1,000 followers or 10,000 followers, you might think they'll do something, bad now. But, they're waiting for the masses. There may be a number in their head that they're looking for. So they're not necessarily doing something bad at the beginning. I mean, it's bad in that they've impersonated you, but they haven't then deployed the action that would cause loss, or the action that would cause people to lose, their identity or whatever. They may be waiting specifically for a time or a volume of users in order to get their percentages. So if on the theory that 3% of the people will fall for the scam once they deploy the fraudulent activity, they want the numbers relatively high so that, enough people fall for that. So I think, like we said, watching that number of followers, and when will they deploy the, fraudulent behavior that then causes the damage. And that's what we don't know, which is why we want to get rid of it as fast as humanly possible, because we don't know when they're going to trigger that fraud.
Yes, that's super interesting. And I also got another question in terms of the audience. Do they get your slides? So the question is, yes, everybody gets a slide deck from Red Points. Afterwards, we will share that afterwards with everybody. And the other thing is, if you want to ask any more questions, please type it into the Q&A section as a chance to ask any questions. I've got one question for Ollie. Ollie, in terms of, you spoke about the risk and similarity score and how important this is. And can you explain it more, how it works and how does it protect brands?
Absolutely. So basically the way it works is, if you imagine all of the data points that are as part of these profiles, so the information that's there, we try to extract as much as the valuable information as possible. So this can be anything from, naturally, the name itself. There's going to be the images associated to it. There's then also the number of followers, the how long when was the account created. So all of these bits of information can contain different weightings as to applying a score to the likelihood of it being infringing. So we use as much of the data that we bring into our database at the point of finding it with these keywords. And then with the algorithmic logic that we have, we can then create likelihood scorings of risk probabilities, basically. And it's with all of this data, it's all data-driven exercises, basically, to really help prioritize all of these cases that we can find.
Very good, interesting. That sounds very interesting, and I think it shows, that you need to have a methodology to go about it in a logical way, because otherwise you forget or you miss things if you don't do it properly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And a final question I've got personally. So as I told you, I was impersonated on Telegraph. And I personally didn't use Telegraph, but all of a sudden somebody used Suzanne Chisti, my name, on Telegraph. So what should I have done? Because I didn't know you at that time. And when I joined Telegraph, I saw somebody else used my name. So then I thought, should I set up my name as Suzanne Chisti #1? Because somebody used my, so what should I do, number one, in terms of account, naming my account, because I wanted to claim the real estate for me, I didn't know how I should call myself, basically. And number two, I then thought, let me contact this person, this impersonator, this hacker, and ask him to remove my account, saying, I know who I am, so you just copied me, please remove my account. And I did that. But they didn't really respond, so I thought maybe it wasn't the best strategy. And then I tried to get in touch with Telegraph, but they have not done anything either. So I've not checked recently, what happened out of it. But what would you recommend? What should I have done better? What would you do?
Yeah. No, I think that's pretty much it. Reaching out to the fraudster usually doesn't work. And if anything, what they might try to do is to blackmail you, try to sell you the account. That's the first thing. The second is, the right thing to do is, instead of reaching out directly, if you just reached out to a generic Telegram email address or contact form, it could be that they didn't process your complaint, because they usually have, as I said, for specific policies and takedown procedures. So I would type, and in this case, we will send to you after the webinar, but I'm sure there's, now I don't know, but I'm sure there's a policy and a form or an email address where you can reach out to report these kind of impersonations. And a company like Telegram will normally take this down if it's a clear case of impersonation. Not only this, but many social media platforms, they allow also to transfer the account name to the person being impersonated. So not all of them have this option. Some of them will only allow you to take down the impersonator, but some others will let you claim the account so that you can use it. And if that account, for example, already has a base of followers, those would be transferred to you. So this can be done also both for companies and individuals. But the key thing here is finding the specific policy dealing with impersonations or with trademark infringements on the platform that you've been impersonated, and then following that policy and the steps to report. If after that nothing works, your next steps would be to try to reach out to them or take legal actions, which usually for a case of an individual impersonation, they don't make sense. So reaching out to a company that may have the expertise or the relationships with the platforms to escalate cases like this may help. In the event that you get no response or that you get a pushback from the platform and you don't know how to handle that, I would say reach out to someone who has the expertise and the connections, and they may be able to help you.
Excellent. That's really super helpful. Thank you very much, John. And I would like to thank all of you for this super interesting webinar, for answering all our questions and for sharing your expertise and knowledge, both on behalf of our live audience who was able to participate now, but also on behalf of our audience who will join the webinar and listen to it afterwards. So thank you from all of them for sharing your knowledge and expertise. And as I said before, everybody who signs up for this webinar will receive the slide deck. If you would like to get in touch with the Red Points team, you've got the names on the information. So it's Daniel Shapiro, Joan Porter, and Oliver Bolton. You can reach out to all three of them on LinkedIn directly, with questions. You can also email us at info@fintechcircle.com. We will connect you to the Red Points team for any follow-up questions. So thank you very much for everybody for joining us. And I wish you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. And goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thanks all.